This is Ken Hance, best storyteller in Texas. The quote of the day is a good one, and this is from Margaret Thatcher, and I love it. It pays to know the enemy, not least because at some time in the future they may be your friend. You need to know them well. A lot going on in the news today about everything that is happening in Congress. A lot's happening in the Middle East. And I want to touch on both those subjects. One, Congress. Byron York, he has a great quote, and he says, "Watching the House Republicans, it's hard to avoid the conclusion that as a whole, they don't really want to run the House or govern. They prefer being the opposition. And voters gave them the majority last year, and they've been very uncomfortable with it ever since. And it looks like they're working to regain the minority." You know, it just, we've gone 2 weeks and we're going to go a little longer, before we finally come to a conclusion. And I think a lot of things have happened since I was in Congress. One, the speaker doesn't have much power like he used to. A speaker, when Sam Rayburn, and that was way before me, but if somebody had moved to vacate the chair, they'd have been put on a committee to see what happens if a dam breaks in Monahans, Texas, or something like that. They'd have been stripped of their assignments. And he had the gavel. He had the power. Decided what bills came up, decided what order, decided who was going to lead the debate and how much time they would have. And so Congress has gradually tried to take away a lot of the power of the speaker. Maybe they should have some. But when one person can move to vacate the chair, in other words, to get rid of the speaker, I mean, you've lost all sense of governance. Gatz, he came in and was able to remove him. And if you said, let's select the most popular member that the other members love, he'd be dead last. I mean, and so he doesn't have any friends to speak of. And yet the speaker was removed because he had a motion and got 7 other Republicans to vote with the Democrats. In Congress, you got show horses, you got work horses, and there's some that can do a little of both. Matt Gaetz, I mean, he is the ultimate show horse. I mean, he's getting his name in the paper, he's getting his name on TV, he's doing everything possible, and that he didn't like Kevin McCarthy, and there was a personal grudge there. And so he brings down the House to a halt, because he can make the motion move, and then he gets 7 other people to back him up, and they vote with the Democrats. And I it doesn't look good. And they say, well, he's not conservative enough. On a scale of 1 to 100, let's say that McCarthy was a 95, and Jim Jordan, let's say, is a 96, and Scalise is a 95 or something. There's not that much difference in them. They need to go ahead and elect someone speaker and move forward. It looks like they can't govern or don't want to. But if you allow one person to make a motion to vacate the chair, get rid of the speaker, that's crazy. You ought to have 10 or 20. I think the speaker needs more power. And of course, with the power, there will come responsibility. And so they'll have to act well, or they'll get removed by a large group, not just one person getting some of his buddies to vote with him on the ability to remove the speaker. And it's almost impossible to get everyone together. There's a lot of Republicans in the North, in Northeast and California, are not as conservative as the ones in the South, but they've still got to get along. They've got a majority, elect a speaker and move on. But we're in a world war potential, and we're sitting around trying to figure out who's going to be speaker, and that they may go outside. They may, have to get someone that's not a member of Congress. But this is a trying time, and there was an article one time in Time magazine, and it was about Sam Rayburn and some of the speakers, and it talked about that. A lot of them were from small towns, and I've mentioned this before on the show. There were some from small towns. They represented the people, but I think from being from a small town, if you couldn't get along with somebody, you still had to deal with them. You had to learn how to get along with them because you're going to see them every day, no matter what. If you live in Dallas, you could, go places they weren't going to be. But if you lived in Dimmitt, Texas, they were going to be there. You were going to see them at church or at school or something. You had to learn to get along with people. And I think some of our people, have not been good at that. And they also the change in the demographics in the nation. Used to, we were more rural society, and people in a rural area, there wasn't one section of town in a small town that was for the more wealthy, or there might be a town that where there'd be a house, in the next block there might be a trailer house, and that one of them be the richest guy in town, one be the poorest guy in town. But you saw each other and you realized you had different opinions. Now we live in neighborhoods that are almost all alike, house-wise and money-wise. And you get to talking to your neighbors and everybody, they agree. You can't think, but why doesn't everybody agree with us? Well, they don't. And it goes back to one of my favorite sayings in politics: no matter how thin a coin may be, it will have two sides. And so you have to think about that. Some of the people in Congress that we don't necessarily like, they got elected by someone, and they're trying to try out their ideas and what they're trying to do. But it's almost impossible for a speaker to govern and tell the chairman of Energy and Commerce or Ways and Means, you got to do this or you got to do that or something, because they're trying to hold on to their power. They're just trying to make sure they don't get removed from office. So that's hard to do. If you were president of a bank and you spent all your time trying to see how you could keep from getting removed from that position, you wouldn't be a very good banker. You wouldn't be able to concentrate on what you need to do. And Congress needs to be able to concentrate on what they need to do. They need to look in the Middle East. What do? We're backing Israel and should. And what are we going to do? Money-wise, what are we going to do with troops? I mean, there are all kinds of decisions that need to be made, and they need to be made in something other than a vacuum. And right now you have a vacuum because you don't have someone in charge of the Republicans or someone in charge of the House. A separation of powers, I think Congress over the last 50 years has given up a lot of power. LBJ was the first president that really understood the Congress as well as anyone ever. And he worked to take some of that Congress and congressional duties and just do them through presidential orders or whatever. I still don't understand why Congress let someone have a presidential order, an executive order of such and such. And it's not a law that they shouldn't have those orders unless it's something that Congress passed. They need to vote on it, and they need to go back and assert their power. The executive has certainly outdistanced the Congress's power. And the judiciary is just kind of separate, and they certainly have in many ways. But separation of powers, are checks and balances. Congress has got to be strong. Instead of fighting each other, they need to pass legislation and go back home and run for re-election. If people like it, they'll vote for it. If they don't, they won't. And it seems like that it gets into a position that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that some people, their job is to keep their job. And I've said before, if you have somebody that's running for Congress and they have not made more in their pay than a congressman makes, don't vote for them. You got to have somebody that's made more, and that if they lose this job, that's fine. That they can move on to something else. But I guess in conclusion, you've got to be a good member. You got to know what to do when it comes to trading. You've got to know what to do. The cotton support cotton loan price. If one side said it's 50 cents, another side said it's 54, well, you can compromise that pretty well at 52. So most issues you can work out. Now, if you take abortion, where one side considers it murder and the other side considers it freedom, you can't have half murder or half freedom. And I'm pro-life, but I'm just telling you that is an issue that there won't be a compromise on. And that'll be voted on by the members of Congress or the members of the state legislature. And so be it, that everybody can go back and run for re-election based on their vote. A lot of duties that you have as congressman, one's trying to help your constituents that get caught up with a federal agency and they're getting run over or they're not getting response. And sometimes, I'd been a congressman about 2 months, and I got a call from a lady in a small town in West Texas, and her daughter was going to marry this guy that was in the Army in Wiesbaden, Germany. And the lady said, we need to get him a pass so he can come home and get married. And she told me time's of the essence. So, okay. I got on it and had a 4-star general at the Pentagon working with me, came to my office, and that afternoon after the 4-star general been there, and we had it worked out to get the guy flown back, and the fella in the Army called me, and he is very polite, but he said, Congressman, if I need to come back to West Texas, I'll call you myself and ask. And so I then decided, anytime someone asks me to do a favor for someone, I need to check with the person that we're doing the favor for to see if they really want that favor. This guy did not want the favor. And so you live and learn. We had a lady from Spring Lake Earth one time call us, and her husband was in Tokyo on a trade group on selling cotton to the Japanese, and he had a massive heart attack. And she was trying to get there, and my staff had a great staff. Glenn Hunt was chief of staff, and he died not long ago, and was a real plus in that he tried to do what I wanted done. He didn't insert his own philosophy or anything like that. But the lady was going to the airport in Lubbock, and they called ahead of time, and she didn't have a passport. And so they arranged for her to go to Los Angeles and change planes and get a passport in Los Angeles while she's, changing planes. And it worked. And she got there, and her husband eventually recovered. But that was government at work for you, trying to do what was good for their constituents and trying to make sure that that people had good service. So, you have your legislative duties, but you also have your constituent duties. Now, a lot of people don't do much on constituent duties, and a lot of people do. I always try to be really responsive. I think John Tower, Senator Tower, was very responsive, and Lloyd Benson. They really got on issues and tried to solve those things if there's any way possible. Now, every once in a while, you'd have somebody call you, and they'd want you to do something, and you'd get to looking into it, and it didn't look good. It wasn't going to pass the smell test. They'd want you to get some agency to rule a certain way that would help their business or something, and so you have to steer clear of those. And then sometimes you get somebody that moved or something, and their Social Security check got lost, and your staff could work that out. So you have those responsibilities, but the number one responsibility is governing. Can you govern? And we need to get a speaker and move on and get back to governing. The reason the Democrats voted with those 8 Republicans is that it would make the Republicans look bad. I guess those 8 didn't figure that one out. They weren't counting. You haven't seen a lot of Matt Gaetz once he did this. But he still send it. I'm on the list, and I get fundraising. I get one from him every day. Sometimes I get 2 or 3, and it says the Republicans in name only. are trying to get rid of me, and I'm fighting the liberals, and I'm fighting this, and I'm fighting, please send me $100 or send me 25. And I always send them a deal, take me off your list, you know. And one time a fellow member of Congress showed me a letter he got back from someone that said, every time I get a letter from you, it's give, 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 money, money, money. I'm sick and tired of it. Take me off your list. By the way, P.S., by the way, the guy you're running against is no good, so I'm going to enclose $100. And the congressman showed me that letter, and he said, you think he's ever going to get off that list? And I said, no, I think he's there for the rest of his life. If you look at what's been happening at the college campuses, so many of the people have been supportive of Hamas in what they were doing. Hamas, you look at the decapitating babies and raping people and everything like that. How can, no matter what happened, you can't justify that. And they've been supportive. There were 30 different student organizations at Harvard came out in support of Hamas. And it was one of the law firms saw a name of one of the persons that was sympathetic to Hamas, and they withdrew their offer to give him a job. And so people are going to be looking at those things. If I were a student, the last thing I would do is get involved in something like this and have that record that people can turn you down or, not hire you. They're going to say, this person's going to be a detriment to our business. They're going to be taking all kinds of positions. Higher ed, in the name of being open, that they allow these organizations to do it. But if somebody like Alan Dershowitz, who is a Democrat but fairly conservative in certain areas, when he was invited to speak at Harvard, they turned him down, said, no, you can't come out here. So it's a double standard. They're for freedom of speech as long as it's to the left, but they don't want freedom of speech if it's to the right. I always took the position that no matter who it was, that they were there. We're in higher education to exchange ideas and thoughts and theories, and you shouldn't say, well, we're going to let this group speak and we're not let this group. Free speech is free speech. It may be yucky speech, but it's something that should be available. Universities all over the nation are having to look at this now, and that they can't keep people that work there or students there from saying certain things, but they do not need to use the university as a platform. The university has to keep their distance from them, and I think that's important. But people are going to be watching your Facebook and everything that you do, and look and see if you were participating in protest of any kind. And so in this day and time, if I were trying to get a job, I would be low-key and I wouldn't be involved in it. And the second thing, do those student organizations at Harvard think that their position is going to affect anyone? That some member of Congress, the Harvard student government, and the Harvard such and such group, they're getting, I've got to vote with them. The only person that might look at it twice and act like they were interested is the person that represents Harvard, but they won't pay much attention to it, and they'll just look at it and say, well, that's so what. This week, stupid criminals. There was a woman, 28 years of age, in Florida. She had her car painted like the highway patrol, exactly, and even had a bar of lights put on top of it, of the white, blue, red lights. And she got arrested and charged with a misdemeanor of copying a police car. And she was just amazed. Well, there's a reason that you can't do that. And they don't want you going around, stopping people or threatening to stop people. And I guess they thought that would give them more leeway. She said she loved the color scheme. You love the color scheme. That's not a good defense. There was a study I saw this week about flat tires. and that 25% of the people say that they could not change a flat. Now, it might take me a while, and I'd have to read the instructions, but I could do that if I had to. But 25% say just couldn't do it. The reason you don't have flats like you used to, that technology, that, tires are better, and that they now predict a person will have 5 flats in a lifetime. And we had 5 in a month when I was growing up. Our tires weren't that good, and then they get a tack or a little nail or something, and they go flat. They didn't gradually go flat. They went flat immediately. And, there were places all over. We fixed flats, and that was part of a service station. You go into a service station now that's on the corner. Look, the person running it's sitting in a booth. They're not going to fix your flat. Good luck. Call, some service that does it. But a flat tire, I had a kid that worked for me one time. He'd have 2 or 3 flats a week. And it just got so bad that we had to let him go so he could fix flats. I just, that was an excuse. And it just kept, he had 2 or 3 a week. I mean, he needed to get a different car. He needed to do something, but we didn't have time. We didn't take him to race. Getting back to the flat tires, 78% of men have changed a flat. 37% of women have changed a flat. And that didn't surprise me at all. And I hope that I'm not in the future in that 78%. I can't think of the last time I had a flat. One time I had a flat in Dimmitt when I was, in college or high school. And I was on the side of the road fixing it, changing. And one of my cousins, Dub George, came by and he said, "You have a flat?" And I said, "No, I'm just rotating the tires." "Yeah, I had a flat." What does it look like? He always reminds me of that story. The Parker Space Probe is the fastest item that's ever been built by government. And it flies at 395,000 miles an hour. That's, you're talking about speeding. I mean, they'd get a speeding ticket on that. 395,000 miles an hour. What we're doing in space, you don't read a lot about it until something really big happens, but they're making a lot of progress. And that as far as, going to the moon and back, can you have a substation there? There's all kinds of things happening at NASA that are good. And they make up almost, nothing in the budget compared to other items. Saying of the day, it pays to know the enemy. Not the least that person may be your friend someday. It's Ken Hance, best storyteller in Texas. Thank you.